This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, saying, Say to the daughter of Zion, Behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. Now what Jesus is referring to here is Zechariah 9:9, which says, Rejoice greatly, O daughter of Zion. Shout aloud, O daughter of Jerusalem. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he. Humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. All right, so who thinks this imagery of a king riding a donkey seems a little bit strange? I do. It's kind of weird. We tend to always envision a conquering king, a mighty king, on top of a great steed, on a horse, something powerful, and justifiably so. Horses we associate with war, with battle, with might. You never imagine, unless it's Don Quixote, someone riding into battle on a donkey. They're animals of burden. They're beasts of burden. Now, if you read all of Zechariah's prophecy, this whole idea of the Messiah riding a donkey, it's even stranger. Because if you read all of Zechariah's prophecy, it definitely has a real Day of the Lord vibe to it. In the entire prophecy, especially in that chapter 9, you don't just have the Messiah saving his people. You also have the Messiah destroying, like utterly destroying all the enemies, pretty much destroying most of the earth. Now this is a source of great confusion. It was confusing for the Jews of this day who were reading prophecy. It's confusing for us today when we look at prophecy. The reason it's confusing, it's a phenomenon we call telescoping. And we have two photographers in here, so you'll get the idea. When you look through a telescope, what generally happens, our eye can only take in so much. So you'll have objects that are hundreds and hundreds of miles apart, but our eye compresses them so it looks like they're pretty much next to each other. It looks like the objects are adjoined when there's really hundreds of miles between them. Well, the same thing, imagine these prophets are seeing supernaturally into the future. And the whole expanse of time is before their eyes at one point. So the same as a telescope will bring objects that are distant close together, these prophets, as they're looking into the future, they're taking events that occur over thousands of years, and it's compressed together and they conflate them as though it's just one event. So they see the first incarnation of the suffering servant, and in the second, the return of the conquering king, and it's pretty much relayed to you in prophecy as almost just like one event, because that's how they're seeing it. Now this conquering king, who is pictured in Zechariah, this conquering king that the Jews at this time expected to see, will definitely come. But he's not going to come until the end of days. Now in Revelation 19, we read, When I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judges and makes war. His eyes are like a flame of fire, and on his head are many diadems. He has a name written that no one knows but himself. He is clothed in a robe dipped in blood, and the name by which he is called is the Word of God. And the armies of heaven, arrayed in fine linen, white and pure, were following him on white horses. From his mouth came a sharp sword with which to strike down the nations. He will rule them with a rod of iron, and he will tread the winepress of the fury of the wrath of God, the Almighty. On his robe and on his thigh he has a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So there will definitely be a day when Jesus does ride into Jerusalem on a mighty battle horse. And how you respond to him this day, how you respond to him now, determines if you'll be part of the army that rides behind him, or you're part of the masses who will be trampled underfoot as he rides into victory to claim the earth as his own for all eternity. Now, because that wasn't his mission the first time when he came, we learned last week that you know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them. It shall not be so among you. But whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. And even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. So it is most appropriate that this first time he actually does ride into Jerusalem on a beast of burden.